Wine is an interesting product in that it's a truly global product. It's also an agricultural good, a consumer packaged goods, and in some cases a luxury good. Wine is a really unique market to understand in that wine is produced on every continent. It's produced in many countries around the world, and consumers of wine tend to develop habits that are specific to their local region. But people are also very interested in exploring wines from other parts of the world. So wines have truly become a global product with global markets, and it makes it an interesting product for marketers to seek and understand. Unlike other ag products, which are sold as commodities, wine is sold as a branded product. Okay, there's different levels, so you have all of the branding issues, labeling, packaging, distribution, pricing, that aren't traditionally associated with agricultural products. Also, most of the farms do their own value added, which turn farmers into marketers. Okay? Plus, in addition, you have a lot of wines that are in the luxury category. So not only do you have a commodity, a consumer packaged goods, but oftentimes you have a luxury good, which, as you know, has its own unique marketing challenges. Wine is a truly global market these days. In the United States, most people are surprised to find that all 50 states now produce wine. Wine is also interesting in that it fits in a broad category called alcoholic beverages. As a result, wine has direct substitutes, right? If the price of wine goes up, everybody does what? They drink beer. The price of beer goes up, everybody switches to wine. In Russia right now we have this phenomenon benefiting wine. The Russians put a nice big tax on distilled spirits. As a result, you saw the market shift from distilled spirits to wine. Okay? So these are substitute goods. So if you look, this is a new category which is actually targeting you guys. How many of you walk into the wine store and just stand there? Because it's aisle after aisle after aisle of things you have no idea about. And there's literally thousands of bottles. You're not alone. Most consumers have no concept. Okay? There are so many producers. It's very, very difficult to establish a dominant brand. Matter of fact, brand shares are only in the single numbers for the big guys even. So it's very small, very fragmented, very fractured markets. So, who do you think leads Western Europe in terms of wine? Who do you think drinks the most? Well, let's look at the 10 big markets and then we'll look at that. Again, by volume, by value. Now, what's interesting here is China is 11% of the volume, only 8% of the value. US, 10% of the volume, 13% of the value. How's that happen again? Because that's a key thing to remember in wine. We drink less, but we pay more. That's right. Okay, so France, 9% of the volume, 12% of the value. So the French also drink less and pay more. Okay, so some markets they drink a lot, but it's not worth all that much, like where's Russia, 4% volume, 3% value. So you see here, 4%, the Japanese are like us too, 4% volume, 9% value. So when you look to evaluate markets for wine expansion, you have to look at both value and volume. One of the things that you've done, and two other products have benefited from this. Champagne had this perception that it's really expensive and really kind of hoity-toity, snooty, very highbrow. Cava and Prosecco came along and said, oh, we're not like that. We're the fun, sparkling wine. And believe it or not, the wine that sells the most to your age group is what kind of wine? fun, sparkling, fizzy wines. In the US, we're making very sweet, fizzy wines for you guys. Wow. But anyway, you seem to like it. And no big surprise here that your local sparkling wine actually did really well. So the sparkling wines of Portugal are actually starting to grow. And again, it's just a preference for younger drinkers. The domestic wines have really experienced a resurgence in Portugal, thanks in no small measure to the fact that your government has spent a lot of money promoting your own local wines. Okay, and there's a lot of information now available from the government about the different wine growing regions. And what they've done in surveys of Portuguese is you're much more aware of the wines in your own country. Matter of fact, you demonstrate a marked preference for your local wines over imported wines. Imported wines do not sell very well in Portugal. Other than champagne, which was kind of the only category of imported wine that you really went for, otherwise you prefer local, and it's very regional. If you're from the north, you prefer the wines in the north, but you will try the others. So if we look at how wines sell, and we look at these newly emerging markets, what you're seeing, you saw that Western Europe right now is the big gorilla market, half of the volume. But you know you've got some problems. You've got a population that's decreasing, you've got some new segments that aren't too interested in your product yet, so we've got to find new wines. There's a real need to globalize among wineries that want to grow. So these are the BIRC countries. I'm sure you've heard that phrase before. BIRC for B-I-R-K, Brazil, India, Russia, China. So usually when we look at developing markets, we look at the BIRC countries. Why? Relatively stable economies, lots of disposable income on the part of consumers. For the most part, these markets are opening rather quickly. Obviously, Brazil is a nice partner for Portugal because united by a semi-common language. Consumers are very confused about wine. They don't understand it. They're intimidated by it, which is why Yellowtail did red and white. I mean, most consumers, when faced with choice of wine, just sort of crumble and just look and throw up their hands and buy by price and hope it's good. So when you look at the numbers here, and the other thing you need to look at as a marketer is where do they buy this stuff? What's the primary distribution channels for wine? Distribution for channels for wine vary all over the place. You have countries where all alcohol is controlled by the government, so it can only be sold in government stores. You have other countries where you can buy alcohol in vending machines. It's completely open. So understanding how consumers interact with the product, very important in wine, because there's a world of difference between competing in Carrefour and the hypermarkets versus competing in specialty shops. Okay? But hypermarkets are becoming a very common place for people to buy their wine. That's making price a real issue. It's making branding important. It's making establishing some continuity with consumers. One of the problems consumers have with wine is that they buy one bottle, they like it, they buy the next bottle, it doesn't taste the same. Remember, agricultural product, grapes change every year. So getting consistency in production is something wineries are trying to figure out how to do now. Port did not have a very good few years. Port sales have sort of tumbled, partially, again, because it's viewed as an old person's drink. Now, one of the ways the port producers have started to try to get you back is making port a mixer, port and tonic. No, huh? You're not looking too happy. There's ways to make port other beverages, and so they're trying to encourage you to use port in other ways. Another thing is port pairings, foods made with port, things that go with port. So we're really trying to get restaurants and chefs interested in using port and then sort of branding it along with it. What you're seeing though is actually sake and rice wines did better. They actually are doing well because, again, remember, wine drinkers are variety seekers. As soon as they figured out there's a non-grape wine, they all went for it. There are sake bars in New York now where you can try all different kinds of sake in the little wooden boxes. When you talk about wine, you can't only talk about where people buy it and where people consume it. You also have to look at how it's distributed. Remember, these wine is on farms, and usually the farm may bottle their own wine, but somebody picks this up and takes it. Okay, and distributors are a key part of this channel. The distributors have the power. The distributors often control where the wine is sold and at what price, and the branding. So often the distributor has to work really closely, or the winery has to work really closely with the distributor to make sure they get their wine in the channels they want, at the price they want, so it's received the way they want it. There's some positive things happening. Wine is actually doing better in some new markets. But these are the four themes for wineries in thinking about their marketing moving forward. The first one there is, you've got to do value for the money. When you have consumers that do not understand a product category, okay? Why should I buy a 20-euro bottle of wine? This 10-euro bottle of wine looks just as nice, okay? There's a lot of consumer information that needs to be given out. A lot of consumers rely on these seals that are on the bottles to indicate that this is a quality bottle worth more than one that doesn't have these. There are some very powerful groups. In the US, we have Wine Spectator and Wine Enthusiast magazine that rate wines. When you go to the wine store, they have the numbers that they've assigned on the wine, and many people will just buy based on the numbers. So giving people the information they need to understand how to value and justify a price point. A lot of people don't buy wine because if I open this bottle, I have to drink the whole thing. And if I live alone, like a lot of people live alone, this is a big waste. Because if I sit home and drink this, I get nothing else done. So small bottles, half bottles, resealable bottles, things that allow consumers to only use what they wish of wine are becoming real big sellers. If you look across the world now, we have a lot of countries where people living by themselves for extended periods is becoming more normal. Okay, as people age, we have a lot of 1 or 2 person households, and a whole bottle is just too much. So you're getting a lot of innovation in packaging, a lot of it in terms of, like I said, resealable, portable, single serve kind of things. You're seeing a lot of the promotion of wine is now involving education. How do you drink it? What do you drink it with? What do you do with this product?